Welcome to the Women in the Arena podcast, a platform dedicated to honoring America's women veterans who dare greatly in all aspects of life. I'm your host, Sarah Scully. At Women in the Arena, we harness the power of storytelling to illuminate the human experience. Through authentic narratives, we honor the resilience, authenticity, and leadership of women who have served our country. Our name, Women in the Arena, pays homage to Theodore Roosevelt's legendary speech, The Man in the Arena, recognizing the remarkable contributions of women in traditionally male-dominated domains. Welcome back to the Women in the Arena podcast. In this incredibly dynamic episode, I had the chance to sit down with Colonel Chaveso, known as Chevy Cook, an Army Special Operations veteran whose career spans elite military leadership, global influence operations, and transformative nonprofit work. Chevy has led teams of various sizes and capacities and brings a deep expertise in international relations, counterinsurgency, behavior modification, organizational dynamics, and strategic communication. His academic grounding in organizational psychology and human development, combined with extensive publications and research on leadership, team dynamics, training, and professional development, adds an incredible depth to every insight he shares. In our conversation, we explore the foundations of effective mentorship, what it truly means to embrace meaningful leadership, and how to assess and evolve organizations from the inside out. We also unpack the many forms of leadership, how we lead in our personal lives, within our communities, both big and small, and how we show up with intention and authenticity in the workplace. Chevy offers powerful, practical wisdom shaped by both his military career and work developing thousands of leaders across the military and civilian sectors. It's a thoughtful, eye-opening look into human dynamics, organizational change, and the kind of intentional leadership that builds stronger teams and communities. We hope you enjoy the episode. Chevy, welcome to the Women in the Arena podcast. Colonel Cook, Chevy, I know you go by a couple different names and a couple different titles, but we're so excited you're here. You are technically our second male guest, but our first male guest in this studio. So we're really, really excited about that. Thankful that you could spend your Veterans Day with us. Thank you for giving us your holiday. Happy Veterans Day to you, and happy Veterans Day to all of our veterans out there. Those who have previously served, are currently serving, and will serve. Thank you. I can't think of a better way to spend Veterans Day than to be here. It's one of my favorite things to do. So would love to first kind of paint a backdrop as to how we got here. So I was connected to you through my fiance. You're one of his former instructors at West Point, and probably saw him in a pretty unique stage of life that I'll never get to. So that's pretty cool. But when the show was first started, he connected me to you because the first thing he said was that you're a connector. And that you were a connector of people, that you love people, you're a huge mentor to people, and just had an amazing network. And I'll never forget when we first got connected via email, I just started getting these notifications. It was like bing, 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 all from you, connecting me to just a wide variety of women. And I thought that was so cool that you just had this amazing network that you could tap into of people from all different ranks, backgrounds, stories, demographics, branches of service. It was just amazing. So first and foremost, thank you for being such an ally to our show, an enabler of connections that we've had since then. But let's introduce you to our listeners. So tell us a little bit about you, a little bit about your backstory, and just kind of where you are right now.
Okay, so you're welcome, and thank you. I love to be a connector. I think when people look at networking, they think about some cause or something they're trying to advance for themselves. But I think networking and connections are all about everyone else and how we can be interconnected. So you're welcome, and I shout out to all the people out there who followed up on those many emails. So thanks. Who am I? I kind of always give the same intro because it's who I am, regardless of the space that I'm in. So I would say I'm a father, I'm a husband, and I get the privilege to be a soldier, which is important on a day like Veterans Day, but still last place for a reason. I say father first because I own kids, right? I've created life with my wife. And being a father, especially with the two kids that I have, has taught me more about not just leadership or other things in life, but just about, leading and being in front of people. And those two kids, London and Lola, London, 16, teenager, born on the 4th of July, driving now, drives me insane, but also keeps me home, keeps me humble, keeps me connected, keeps me grounded because that's my first one. And the one that always tests and challenges me, and the one that looks the most like me and acts the most like me as well. So that's London. Then I have Lola, who is 6 and is almost 7. She'll be 7 about Thanksgiving. And Lola's, she's autistic, but she also has ADHD. And that's just the way she, views the world, the lens that she sees things through. So they have taught me a lot about myself and about leading because I can't lead them the same way in my household. I can love them the same way, but they also require different levels of attention and different types of dad. And she's very energetic, and I'm not in my 30s anymore, so I have to keep up with that little one. So that's father. I get to be a father because I'm a husband. Ashley and I have been together for 27 years, 19 married. We'll celebrate 20 here in the spring. We met in AC Flora High School in Columbia back home, back when we were just somebodies in some place, before we were important and had jobs and all of this stuff. And the reason she is very important to describe who I am is because she's basically orchestrated who I am. A lot of people see the things that I've accomplished or read a resume and they think that I'm just like going in the arena, no pun intended, but pun intended, and knocking down targets. But what's actually happening is Ashley is behind the scenes, making me see who I am, being the best version of myself through her guidance and direction. And Ashley, as a wife and as a leader in my household, has really helped me be who I am, and has seen things that I couldn't see in myself, has seen things that we couldn't see in the kids, and has stepped us into that space. So that's why being a husband is very important, and helps me identify who I am. Way before I was all of the titles, she was the one saying, you need to consider this, you need to do that. Why don't you do this? Did you know this about yourself? And when I get a little bit too high and mighty, she does a really good job of chopping me back down. And we're best friends too. And then last, I would say soldier, not because it's the least important, just because being a father and a husband comes first. And I get the chance to be a soldier, right? Those other two were choices. This one's more of a privilege. I've been serving in some various version of a uniform because I'm a West Pointer and a prepster for the better part of 26 years, 22 years of service now. And I work in the Pentagon. And I work on a variety of unique things in the Pentagon, mainly in the basement. But I work basically non-kinetic effects in the Pentagon. And it's a unique place to work with unique people, with very talented people. But it all comes down to just being a soldier or airman or Marine or what have you. Putting our best foot forward, putting our best advice forward, putting our best heart forward, putting our best mind forward, maybe, to make sure that people at the highest echelon can have the space to manage risk and the space to make decisions. So that's me in a summary, quick summary.
Awesome.
Probably a longer summary than I should have.
That was
So,
a good one. That's a good like elevator speech of who you
mhm,
are, elevator pitch. So I want to also talk about your path into service. I think
mhm,
it's really, really amazing. Something I like to do before I interview people is find other times that they've spoken. So
mhm,
I've done some digging
mhm,
and listened to some other
mhm.
times that you've opened up and shared a little bit about
Yeah.
you. So your entry into military service, your path to West Point was not that anyone's story is common, but I would say
Mhm,
yours was uncommon in the sense that, you had some pretty we'll call them, moments of, one door, you had two doors in front of you and this one door
mhm,
open and then this other door open and you went
mhm,
this way. And, you know, depending on which door you chose, life could have looked a whole lot different. And
mhm.
so I don't want to spoil or tell your story, but tell us a little bit about, being in high school and, what led you to a life of service and how you got there.
That's a interesting question. It always is interesting because reflection is well in our household. Reflection is a superpower. That's one of the superpowers
I
in the
love
house.
that.
And reflection requires you to look backward, but it's also for like progression. And when I look back at that time in high school and how I ended up at West Point and everything, it was about the future, even though it was rooted in my past, right? So I grew up, a lady that I get the privilege to call my mom today was my next door neighbor at one point, and I didn't grow up in the best neighborhood. Now, some people may say like Columbia, South Carolina is not Compton or Detroit or Darfur or someplace else that's hard to grow up in, but every place has difficulty.
Hmm.
Every place has shattered glass and broken things. And in that space where I was growing up, it was a difficult kind of place to be raised. I saw drugs and everything else that you can think of in a typical 80s neighborhood. And as I grew up in that space, my mom, Mama J, my next door neighbor, um, she said, "Hey, the only way you're gonna be able to get away from this is if you go to school. And not only will you go to school, you have to, and you have to figure out how to pay for it because we don't have it." She put microchips on motherboards during the day, very tedious task,
Hmm.
right? And then at night, came home, cup of ramen, spaghetti, or whatever, and rinse, recycle, repeat. Went to Richland Memorial Hospital and was a janitor, and did janitor things all night until she came home, put us to bed, and I did that every day for a long time. So just said she wasn't able to pay for it, but I had to go to school and I had to figure it out. So when a young lady who had just graduated from West Point came into my JROTC classroom in ninth grade and talked about the United States Military Academy and talked about the nature of it, the impact it could have, and what was required. I had one question: how much does it cost? And she explained what the education was worth at the time and said, all you got to do is serve.
Hmm.
And I had served in the community through, my mom's stuff. I had served in the community through our JRTC, so I thought I knew what service was. Didn't have a military background. No one in our family was like a Vietnam veteran or anything like
Hmm.
that. But here we were, in that space, and I was like, school, free, yes.
Yeah.
And so I can't. That's how I ended up wanting to go to the United States Military Academy, and how that surrounding back then, I guess, could have crumbled me, um, but like little pieces of Legos actually built me into something and allowed me to climb out of that space. And West Point was that first kind of place to take me somewhere else.
And I really want to highlight what you said at the beginning of all of this, which was that this was a next door neighbor, right?
Yes.
Mama J.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I just think that's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
When you hear most people's stories, it's, I had maybe a, maybe my parents weren't around and then my
Mm-hmm.
grandma came
Mm-hmm.
and picked me up. And there's kind of that,
Mm-hmm.
um, biological blood
Oh yeah.
connection of, this is my blood. I take care of my own. But this was a lady who more or less kind of saw you from afar, saw you growing
Mm-hmm.
up and said, I want to take you under my wing and
Mm-hmm.
raise you like my own and push you to recognize what is
Mm-hmm.
in you that I see that maybe you can't see right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, she's the original woman in the arena. Mama J, Janet Lemon. Her nickname was Sunkissed, like the oranges,
Mhm.
when she worked at Quality Electronics, which she is now retired from. But I think what made her and continues to make her special is that, look, she's not educated, but you don't have to be,
Right.
right? Wisdom comes from time and experience, and she was just wise at a young age.
Mhm.
She'd lost her parents as a very young kid and only had her sister, and they both lived in Colombia. And she was living next door with a living boyfriend who eventually left because he was like, you brought these kids in here, you need to choose me or them. And, she just kind of walked down the hall and started packing some things up. And he was like, "What are you doing?" And she was literally packing his stuff and said, "You can get out." And he left and never came back. But the real thing there is she saw us from afar, not too far because we're just next door neighbors, borrowing milk, eggs, butter, sugar, the normal stuff that kids do, the normal stuff that you borrow from a neighbor in the South. And she also saw the other things, right? She saw the drugs. She saw us being involved in stuff that we shouldn't be involved in. And she stepped into the arena,
Mhm.
right? She said, hey, I bet I can distract them from doing that stuff if I just invite them over for the evening. And then the evening became, do you want to stay for the weekend? And then it became, well, you got to walk to the bus stop anyway. I'm closer to the bus stop. Why don't you just stay here during the week too?
Mhm.
And we literally moved from next door with laundry baskets and trash bags full of stuff. And eventually we just kind of stayed.
Yeah.
Eventually it became a real deal adoption. Like she did all the legalese for
Yeah.
it. But at first it was just, she wanted to intervene. And she had a heart that was probably as big as the earth, much bigger than a space like that ghetto in Columbia, South Carolina. And that's all that matters. Sometimes you just need to see things and then act.
Yeah.
If we can see something and say something about a loose bag in an airport, man, the world would be really different if we looked at kids and people in our society that way. Mama J did that.
I love it. And as we, celebrate a holiday that's centered on service, I
Hmm.
love stories like that because she didn't need the accolades or the
No,
uniform or the ribbons. She
no.
just had service in her heart.
Yeah.
And most of the people that we interview who have had tremendous careers, when you ask them, who have been your people, who have been your
Hmm.
women in the arena, who have inspired you, it's more often than not someone like that, someone who was in their corner at a young age, who
Hmm.
um, had a honestly true example of selfless service in the highest
Hmm.
degree. And so I think that's such an incredible story. So thank you to Mama J if you're listening
Hmm.
out there. We
Hmm.
love you. We love you.
She's
So
special.
she is for sure. And so moving on to next thing we wanted to talk about,
Yeah.
which is who are some of your other women in the arena? You've got some pretty amazing ladies in your life. Want to hear about them?
Yeah, I think obviously it starts with Mama J, and I'll probably circle back to Ashley as well. I've already talked about her, but I will continue to keep her name on my lips. Um, I came to the Army and immediately I was Air Defense Artillery in the 82nd. I was in a battery with 130 dudes, no women, and no women are really across the battalion except for the chemo, who were still friends on Facebook. That also shows my age because I use Facebook. Um, but we deployed, and I deployed with those 130 guys during what became the surge. And then I returned and I transitioned to what I do now in the special operations community. And I had the first female battalion commander of that tactical style unit, a PSYOP battalion, which was Wendy Graham. And Wendy was fierce, loyal, caring, driven, everything you needed in a battalion commander, but also like paid particular attention to us young team leaders, captains running around. And Wendy stayed in touch when she left. She took care of me in a couple different ways where I had some difficulty with some young leaders. It's probably more me than them, but she saw something in me and propped me up for success. Fast forward. So I had Bethany Aragon. She was my group commander, '06 level commander. I'm pretty sure she was the first to lead a special operations group as a woman, and she was driven, forceful. She was in your face, but in a good way. Um, had exacting standards, but listened. Uh, Sought out my counsel, my advice as much as I sought hers. We told each other the truth. And a lot of times you can't do that.
Mhm.
A lot of times you couch your words because they're senior rating you and they're determining your career. And we had very, very frank discussions, still do. That's the important part of this conversation that I'll circle back to is Wendy Graham and I still talk text. She's been retired.
Mhm.
When I needed to make an IG complaint and she was the USAC IG, she listened. She listens now when I just need to ask a question. Same thing with Bethany, also retired. We still text. She's becoming a lawyer. Fast forward, and I work for Christine Wormuth, the first female secretary of the Army in her first year. I got there and got to start writing terrible speeches before she came in
I
and
don't
tore
believe
my
that.
speeches up. But an amazing leader. Probably one of, if not the best leader, period, gender, demographic, whatever, of all the people I've ever been around. Her grace in spaces and her discernment. I choose those words very specifically. Grace isn't just being polite and being nice in spaces. Grace for me, watching Christine Wormuth, was the ability to deflect negativity while also pulling in positivity and the best out of people and walking like you own a space.
Mm-hmm.
That type of grace, like a head of state, not just the leader of the military, but also her discernment. So I think decision making is like right here. That's where y'all can, like my toddler, yeah, toddler can do that. Am I hungry? Am I not? Prudence is one level above that. Prudence has something to do with time. Did I make a good decision and when is it timely? And people want to be good decision makers, but you really want to be prudent. I think the highest level of that is discernment. Discernment is being a good decision maker and being prudent multiple times over and over and over time, while also plucking what is the quintessential essence out of a problem or out of the room. This is what no one in here is saying that we need to focus on. That's what she did very well, discerning. So if I could have a modicum of her grace and her discernment, I'd be, I don't know, I'd be a much better, much taller person too. But just to be in the space with her, just to be in that arena. And if you think about what was happening that year with Fort Hood and the tragedy that happened there with the Guillen family, if you think about us trying to think of people first and trying to define what that is, which is still, a lot of people wrestle with, well, what does it mean? Is it mission first, people first? And you think of her stepping into a space that needed a different style and type of leadership at the time. That was an amazing space to be in, and how she made me feel like I was present. Met my daughter and treated her like she was her own daughter. And I met her mom during that time, and I see where she got it from. So another woman in the arena too. And then maybe I'll close out with Ashley. Look, people ask me all the time, like, what leaders inspire you? And I just named a number. One that's very famous and a couple that aren't. Look, my wife is not famous. She doesn't want to be, but she's famous in our household. The way I watch her lead my kids, task change, switch from, because she works from home, from leading in her business space to caring very discreetly for two very different children. And then the third child that's in the house, which is technically me, right? Growing me, managing the space that is a crazy career with all my extracurricular activities. You can't beat her when it comes to the pace that she runs, the discernment she has, the grace by which she walks with, and the way she just does it in a quiet fashion. Very powerful. I mean, it's almost like she has some type of Marvel superhero kind of power where she can just like push and the room expands and closes and you don't even notice it. But she does it with such effortlessness. It's kind of like she would do her hand like this off to the side and you wouldn't even see it. And me being able to be in that space with her daily, because I can't be with the Bethany's and the Wendy's and the Christines all the time, is a blessing for sure.
That was beautiful. And if our listeners can't tell, you're a very great writer, which is coming out, and how eloquently you just said all of that and some of the vocabulary that was used.
Thank
But
you.
no, very, very beautiful. And I love what you said about your wife. I often say that when we talk about leadership, we equate it to whether it's in the military or civilian world, being in a board meeting or making these big decisions at work. And sometimes that's a lot easier for people to do that at work, and it's harder to lead at home. I mean, leading at home takes a lot of intentionality, energy, sacrifice.
Hmm.
And so I really like that you said that.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up. I think so many times, like we tie our identities to like what we do professionally.
Yeah.
Look, I'm a soldier. Like, there's nothing like I point like this. Ashley's like, when we're in Walmart, and she's like, "Where's that thing?" And I'm like, "It's over there." She's like, "You're doing that again. Like, you don't have a rifle in your hand."
Yeah.
So I am, but I think we discount the leadership that is required at home. That's why I say father, husband. That's how I describe myself first. But I watch her. Like, I watch her. I have a PhD because I have a picture of this. I'm laying on the bed. I'm doing some like homework when I'm getting one of my other grad degrees. And I have my daughter on my back. She's also reading. She's not reading the heavy duty stuff that I'm reading,
Yeah.
but she's young. And she's like, "Hey, you need to figure out how to get a PhD." And I'm like, no, like, this is not. But that was a gradual conversation that she continued to plant the seed. She was being a constant gardener, if you will,
Yeah.
of that, planting that seed, then watering it, just bringing some sunlight, keeping some pesticides on it, just to keep some of the bugs away. Like, she was constantly doing that. That's that, and I have one because she made that come to fruition. Not because I wanted to. Yeah, I was the person in the arena doing the typing and all the stuff, but she afforded the space for that to happen. She afforded that reality to be a thing. Oh, by the way, she works for other women in the arena, right? So she works at UPenn. She works for the Wharton School. One of the women she works for is Angela Duckworth, Grit fame, TED Talk, big persona, right? And she manages. I mean, that she does not have an easy job to do all the things that Angela and other people in Wharton require, but then she can task shift directly to the needy one who wants some pretzels or something, or just needs attention. She doesn't really want the pretzels. And then the husband who comes home, who fakes like he's not tired, but he is, so he can kind of dive into things. And I can't cook because I, have an hour and 20-minute commute. And she can navigate all that space and be on task and on target time and time and time again. And for the listeners out there that aren't recognizing the leadership that is nearest to them, I ask them to stop wearing shades, stop wearing the blinders, take them off and look, because it's nearest to you.
Yeah.
You don't have to see them in a corporate setting. You don't have to see them on a TED Talk or on some podcast.
No.
You can see them in the neighborhood with you or in the house with you.
Yeah. And going back to, I'm going to keep bringing up Mama J because I think she's awesome. But going back to that, concept, that type of leadership is, in my mind, almost more admirable because there's no ribbon for being an amazing wife. There's no gold star for being, the best partner to your spouse or a mom or whatever title it is you have. It's really kind of a selfless sacrifice form of leadership to show up for your people every day. But the reward is the unit that you build that will stand the test of time and really is, at the end of the day, like you said, that is who you are, right? Because the rest of it's all going to go away at some point. And
it will.
And that's what you're going to die with is the family unit and the people that you cultivate those things with. So moving into mentorship. So you said something earlier that I loved, and this is why I love interviewing people. Well, one of the many reasons is that I learn things about myself when I hear other people talk. And you said something about how networking isn't just about advancing your own interests, but it's also about advancing the interests of other people. And I think I just learned something about myself because I love networking, but I feel like when I say that, people think, oh, I love shaking hands with people and telling them about my business pursuits and my ideas about the world. But I love networking mainly because I love when I meet someone and they tell me they have this niche interest, but they don't know what to do with it. And then I remember 2 years ago that I interviewed this guy, Colonel Cook, and he said that he also, and I love connecting them. And so, mentorship is, a foundation of who you are, not just because you're an Army officer, but because of, I think, the community that you've built in your writing and your network and also your nonprofit pursuits. So tell us what it is that you love about mentorship and what you've done throughout your career to kind of cultivate meaningful spaces for mentorship for people in uniform, out of uniform, wherever it may be.
So my going in proposition is that mentorship is more important than leadership. I just talked a whole lot about leadership, right? in my family and in different spaces. But I do think that mentorship is the ultimate form of connection with and development of another person, which is why I elevate it so much. So mentorship for me and the importance of connecting with others through mentoring is all about the other person. I have a personal purpose statement that I've had since I was 28 or 29 is I am purpose built to serve others. One of the ways to serve others is mentoring them. Now, I have a specific definition of mentorship that we can maybe get into, but I look at mentorship in a different light than leadership, in a different light than coaching, in a different light than teaching, and in all of those cases, I think the best mentors can see themselves as a leader, as a coach, as a teacher for another person, and I think it comes from the original people who were investing in me, right? I talked about Mama J and some others, but I grew up in a house without a father. So those coaches on the baseball field that I had at a young age, the Mr. Corey Roberts, that was my fifth grade teacher, Paul Thomas Grimes, who was a Vietnam veteran, who retired in the 80s, who was teaching me in that JRTC classroom in the 90s, they were all trying to get the best version of me to exist with little to no investment outside of the time that they were spending, right? And as all of these people don't have the same blood as me, right? So I saw that example paired with the example from my mother, Mama J, and then I just wanted to figure out a way to do that for others. And a lot of my early decisions around mentoring and about connecting with people, I thought was leading.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I was, because I was leading them from their point A to their point B, not mine. I wasn't trying to make a mini me, pull them onto my pathway, and let's go this route together. Guide on the side as opposed to sage on the stage, as Lisa Fain, another woman in the arena that we could talk about, would say. But I think it was that ability to help them get down their path, help them see pathways, and help them flesh that out. That's why I care, I think, about mentorship the way that I do, because I think it's a way, probably one of the ultimate ways to develop another person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And something else that in reading some of your publications and some of the things that you've created that you've talked about is that individuals and organizations should not be responsible for their own development independently. So we shouldn't be on an island when it comes to our development, figuring it out on our own. And one of my biggest, I guess, surprises when I left the military was that the military doesn't always get it right, but we are an amazing leadership development organization. And that's
100%.
part of our culture, is that when you go somewhere, you're going to be taken under your wing by leaders of different levels, and they're going to foster mentorship with you in different types of ways. And I remember showing up to an organization that it was just kind of, well, your mentorship and your development, that's your thing. You go learn, you have this job, you go learn about it, be good at it, and show up and do it. And I just disagree with that so much. I think that mentorship and development is what builds trust and a sense of belonging in an organization. If you want to retain people, you want people to be bought in, you got to show that you care about them, and you got to create this culture of, hey, there's something for you here. There's something for you to learn and to grow and to develop. So for someone showing up to an organization, whether it's military, non-military, wherever it is, and it's clear that that culture does not exist. There's not a lot of mentorship going on. Maybe there's like a mentorship program, but it's check the block, 20 minutes, I got to do this so I don't get in trouble kind of thing. What would be some steps that you'd say, or some things that you would want to implement as a starting point to kind of shift that?
So first I would call it out.
Yeah.
Like, that's a pretty bold statement to say right off the bat, but that's the type of person I am. I think you have to call it for what it is. You have to see it. You have to call it out. You have to tell your leadership. You have to tell your teammates. You have to tell yourself that this is what's occurring. No one cares about us. You don't know how many times I've done some type of consultation with respect to military mentors that we've done exit surveys, or they had exit survey data and people were leaving because they weren't being mentored, especially in the veteran space, especially veterans who have served, who've transitioned to this arena, and they were welcomed very well because they had this, like, this
Story.
veteran program, and they have a story to give, and they get to keep those corporate numbers ticking where we've hired this many veterans, but they don't transition them well, and they don't keep them, they don't retain their talent. So first thing you need to do is call it out, call it for what it is, point to it. Again, that's obvious in the room. I'm going to point to it and say, this is what's happening. Again, just like the bag, see something, say something. That's first. Second, I would want to think about what my individual needs are, but what also the organizational needs are.
Mm-hmm.
So those can be one and the same. They can also be very different.
Yeah.
Right. I've seen a lot of people think about the idea that, hey, everyone here gets an MBA, or everyone gets a PMP. We want everybody in the scrum, so we're going to all be Lean Sigma Six and all that. Well, that's great, and it can be good.
Mm-hmm. But
what about that idiosyncratic approach to a person? What about their individual development? We don't do that for our kids, so why would we do that in our workspace? Mm-hmm. Right? I described how different my kids are. They require different types of attention, and we pay attention there in our homes. Why wouldn't we do that work? So that's that second piece, is recognizing maybe what you need individually, but also recognizing what the organizational needs are and trying to meet both of them. And then third, because I'm a nerd, and yes, that rhymes, is I would want to look into the mentoring literature and think about how we could do some interventions within the organization to help. So Kathy Cram's work back in the 80s would point out 2 specific things that we can do to look from a literature perspective and look at our organizations and look at us individually. One of them is educational interventions. So what do we need to read, listen to, write about, ingest, right? It's just the educational pieces. This is stuff that can make us individually and organizationally better. It could be a learning pathway that a readership journey that we all read the books and stuff, and that is the educational piece. It could also be thinking about the PMPs and the MBAs and those kind of things, because those are all educational interventions. But I think we really understand that usually. That's why we push for the degrees and push this stuff on to people, and people ask for those things. They're also resume builders. But what we tend to forget is the structural interventions. That's the other one. Educational interventions, structural interventions. The structural interventions would be maybe not so simple, but just as simple sometimes. Structural intervention could be simple. We are going to make space on our calendar for development. Mm-hmm. The structure is the calendar and creating the space. Mm-hmm. That's not too difficult. We just need to find the white space and say, like, this is set aside for these types of development within the organization. A more difficult structural intervention might be the C-suite individuals are no longer on the 13th floor, right? Mm-hmm. We got 13 floors, so you got 13 CEOs or different people within the organization, and we put them one per floor so they can be accessible structurally. Mm-hmm. Or structural intervention could be, this used to be a break room. Now it is a developmental area, right? Like that's where our books are. That's where we have our meetings. That's where we're going to co-locate. That's where the CEO can come and the janitor can come in, and we can interact over coffee and do the things. That could be a structural intervention that can really be a game changer within a space just because you paid attention to it. So easy structure is the calendar. Mm-hmm. Difficult structure is maybe moving people around in the building. But all of those things work. And just to walk it back, so the last one was the nerdy piece, educational interventions, structural interventions. And then the middle piece was, what do we need to figure out individually, organizationally, because they can be one and the same, but also semi-separate. And then that first piece is being bold, right? Being the person in the arena, calling it out. This is what needs to happen. This is what I see happening or not happening. And oh, by the way, maybe I'll volunteer to lead this effort, even though it's not in my portfolio. Mm-hmm. Those would be the 3.
Isn't structural change so fascinating because it sounds so simple, but the, I guess, small, big, whatever you want to call it, it could be seen as small or big change of changing where someone works or changing where something is located, how much that can shift culture and behavior.
We pay attention to it for promotions, right? Yeah. Like, this is what I don't get. Like, someone's like, oh, we promoted this person, so they get the corner office. Yeah. We know that makes a difference. So if we want to make a difference developmentally, what about, I'm not saying they don't get the corner office and you don't earn it. What I'm saying is moving people around or creating a space in a way that can be developmentally important. We make maker spaces now, right? Like people are good about putting creative spaces in buildings, or having glass, everything's glass so you can see everybody, or having everybody have stand-up desks. Those are all structural interventions so we can interact and so we can be more healthy. How about let's do that for development? It's the same stuff. Just having the mindset. It's about mindsets with this. Like I am a developmentalist. When I was a battalion commander, and you could come, if we did this at my house, you would see a big plaque. It would say, it didn't say I'm the battalion commander. It says I'm the CDO. I was a chief development officer.
I love that.
Right? And I walked that walk as a commander.
Yep.
And that's the approach that I took. So for the people out there that are thinking about doing this in their space, call yourself a CDO, regardless of where you sit in the organization. And for you people who are actual leaders, or actual senior leaders within the organization, be it civilian or military or what have you, call yourself a CDO. And when you come with that mindset, you will walk into a space and recognize when it needs a structural, educational, individual, organizational change.
Yeah. It's different, not necessarily in the development and mentorship thought space, but I read something, I'm forgetting the gentleman's name now, but it was a commander who wrote a piece recently about addressing sexual assault and sexual harassment in his formation. And I thought this was so fascinating because we spend all this money and time and research on getting to the root cause. So identifying demographics and trends and all these things, which are useful. But it was the first time I saw somebody write about or talk about addressing the issue with structural change. So he identified that the barracks where most of these incidents were happening and most of the cases were from were more or less co-located to a liquor store. And that's very common. If you go on a military base, you have where the soldiers live and eat and work. And then right next to there, you have maybe a convenience store and a liquor store on post with, cheap and accessible liquor for all. And depending on where you're stationed, there might not be a whole lot to do. So it pretty much creates this culture of underage or, very young individuals who are new to being adults, new to being on their own, having access to alcohol and not having as much oversight from leaders to help them make good, safe, healthy decisions for themselves. And he changed. I can't remember what he did exactly. I want to say he got permission to move the barracks, I believe, because I don't think he could move the liquor store, to get his soldiers further away from this thing that was more or less contributing to this behavior that he wanted to see changed. And it sounds so simple, but it was crazy. And it caused all this talk and all this stuff. He's like, I just want to get my people away from here, and I want to allow more people to live off post, which is a cultural thing in the military to let enlisted soldiers do that. And I was like, so simple. It's not this, 5-year study where we're following people through their service and interviewing them and doing all these things. It's okay, let's identify 2 things that we know are contributing to this bad thing and move it.
Yeah, easy stuff. Easy stuff. There's a great book out there called Nudge for people who want to get into the science about it. But this actual concept, another version of this is called liberal paternalism. It's a psychological principle of helping people make better choices. Not making the choices for them, but helping people make better choices. We do it in elementary schools, right? When we want kids to eat better, guess what we do? For the soda and the pizza, you actually have to get somebody to help you. It's like back here, you got to get some help. But the apples and the cookies and water, well, not the cookies, the apples and the water and the healthier stuff, it's right here accessible to you. You don't need any help, right? I didn't make you drink water or have the apples. You chose that. But I'm being, right? I am being paternalistic, not in the kind of male sense, but in the leadership sense of I'm helping you make a better choice. And it's just, again, it's a mindset. It's a reckoning. It's I can see this. It's a lens that I have on at all times, that I'm looking for these things. I'm not looking for problems. I'm looking for opportunities for development, opportunities for our organization to be better, opportunities for our people to be better. And it's a step back. Part of it is, and I learned this from being a commander, is there are tons of things you want to do. There are going to be a ton of things that are being asked of you, both indirectly and directly. And it's not a balance. It's having an awareness of, okay, I need to be receptive to what's being said to me, even if that is under the table. And a lot of these developmental things, or if we have a cultural problem in the organization, it's really a lot of stuff not being said outright that we just have to have an awareness for.
Yeah.
And that requires us to step out of ourselves, to reflection, probably self-development over time, so we can have empathy, sympathy, emotional intelligence, and all the kind of cliche things that people say we need to have that we don't focus on. We actually need to focus on those things. And that awareness is important, I think, from a leadership and a mentorship perspective, for sure.
Definitely. How would you suggest assessing what the needs of an organization are when the people in the organization are incredibly diverse, be it different, departments, so there are different people with different focuses in different industry, age demographics, things like that. What's a good way to assess what the needs are? Wow.
So there's all kinds of needs assessments and things you can pay for. Go out there and spend big bucks on. You can get some consultant to come in. Not saying you have to have us come in, but you can get people to do that stuff for you. But I like to pull all the way back from all of that. And I'm going to give maybe just, kind of a theoretical kind of perspective, because that's what I always do. And I'm going to give you some brass tacks. The theoretical perspective starts with my last answer to the last question, or some of my thoughts around having an awareness and seeking awareness in a true awareness. Now, I'm not a fan of, take your 30, 60, 90-day assessment when you walk in and don't change anything. No, absolutely not. Because if we had rampant sexual harassment in my organization, day one, I'm changing that right now. So I'm not going to wait 30, 60, 90 days to figure that out. So why do I have to wait 30, 60, 90 days on other things that I want to change right now? I only have 30, 60, 90 days of those 2 years or those 4 years or however much time I have. So getting that awareness like up front is the theory kind of behind it, the philosophical kind of perspective I have of having a bias for change and wanting to improve the organization, not the whole cliche like leave it better than you found it kind of thing. Having a real look and a bias for, what am I looking at? What do my ears tell me? What do my eyes tell me? What is my mind saying? What is my heart saying? Because there's emotion involved. What's my gut say? My hunch. There's some feeling here. Gaining that awareness, like the old 80s TV where you like wrap some tinfoil around the rabbit ears and you like adjust it and you like turning the thing. You got to do that. And it's a constant like doing that as soon as you get in an organization. So that's first, and that's theory, right? The philosophy of having a change and understanding bias when you get in. Now here's the brass tacks stuff that I would say do. And I've done this multiple times over and over, and it has worked. I walk around with 3x5 cards. And I give them to random people. It's really simple. They can be a leader or not. They can be lower ranking or high. They can be a middle manager or just somebody that I kind of pass by in the hallway. They can be talkative or somebody that's really quiet. Doesn't matter. I just try to, get a random kind of sample of, and I just kind of give these cards out. And I ask for very simple things. Who's a leader in the organization? What do I need to change? What do I need to keep? 3 questions. That's it. Who's a leader? What I need to change? What I need to keep? Take as much as you want on the 2 sides of that card. When I receive those cards back, I've done this multiple times, and I save a lot of these cards too over the years. What that does is instantaneously gives me data. Notice I didn't say who's not a leader. No, that first question answers itself. Right. They will write down. And I tell them the explicit direction there is, I don't care what position they're in. Just tell me if we were going to fight right now, who you would follow behind. I get E4s on there. I get corporal. I get all kinds of random names on there. But what I'm also paying attention to is whose name is not on there. Who's in an actual key leadership position, who's not named. And if I see that as a pattern over time, I know who my leaders are and who they aren't. Right. What do I need to change and what do I need to keep? Those are kind of simple questions, right? You'll hear people complain a lot about a lot of things, but again, I'm looking for trends. If I hand out 24 of these cars, 24, and I don't know, 18 of them say I need to change this one thing, then I'm changing that tomorrow.
Right.
I don't need to wait 30, 60, 90 days. I gave these cars out. Most of the time I'm doing this before I even change command or walk into an organization, by the way. They'll tell you if you just ask.
Mhm.
And a lot of times people don't want to ask those things, but I also like there's some things you might want to keep, right? That's why I asked that question, because I think you walk in and you're like, I don't like that. I don't like that we do that on the schedule. But if I got 24 cards or 36 cards all saying every single card says keep this one thing that I don't like personally, then I'm keeping it, because it looks like I have a majority of people here want that thing. So I'm not going to change that. Wow, I have the data in my pocket, right? And I think just having those cards right out off the bat really helps with things. Now, what it really does is it does something internal to the cards too. So I got to change the things I want to keep, the things I want to change on one side of the card. On the flip side, it tells me who the leaders are. I immediately have a meeting with the leaders, and I'm not afraid to be exclusive. I did this before. As a battalion commander, there was a company commander not named as a leader on any of my cards. When I had an initial meeting, the company commander wasn't in there. I had E4s in there though. That person was really pissed.
Yeah.
Really, the senior enlisted advisor for me was like, so-and-so is not in here. I was like, I know. That's purposeful. Now, that's going to say I was exclusive, right? No, I was inclusive, because what I was doing was bringing leaders into the space who had been named as leaders, one, and two, I was sending a clear signal to the person who wasn't seen as a leader that we had some work to do.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, me and that person sat down like, hey, you're not in this meeting. You know why? I have these cards. I have this data that says you're not showing up as a leader. So how are you and I going to fix that?
Mm-hmm.
So then we did, right?
Good. Yeah.
And I wouldn't know that if I didn't ask the question. Also, I wouldn't know that if I just carte blanche included them just because they had a leadership position. No, I grew up in too many communities, mainly in a special operations community, where it doesn't matter what's on your chest.
Mm-hmm.
It matters what's in your heart and your gut and in your head. All right. Can you execute? Can you get me on the X? Can you get me off the X? Can you do the thing? Is this your weapon system?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a lightsaber for a pen?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Can you write? Can you communicate? I need that stuff. I need an athlete and a subject matter expert more than I need your rank.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be the very kind of simple brass tacks things that I would do. Note cards.
I like the note cards thing, because one of the questions I wanted to ask you was, you've spent a good portion of your career studying psychology, organizational behavior, people. You have a strong academic foundation, and it's hard, I think, for me personally, sometimes you meet people who have spent a large portion of their life in academia, and they've been studying the things, and they know the facts, and they know the data and the theories, and it's okay, well, how do I take that and how do I bring it to this small team and make it simple and digestible and applicable? Because people are busy. They don't want to hear you talk to them about such and such theory of, organizational behavior. But how do I take this very, applicable real theory and make it digestible to people and practical? And the note card is a practical, simple thing. I think anytime you implement change, you have to keep it incredibly simple. If you come in with this big grand plan of, we're going to do this big, survey, and we're going to do focus groups and all those things, it's just like, oh God, here she comes. And the next leader of this organization.
Turns people off.
Yeah. And, a note card with 3 questions is simple, and it probably speaks to this whole array of things that we could get into, and books and all, all these things, but it's just a simple 10 minutes of someone's day that's giving you the data that you need to change something.
Now that, as you can tell, was survey data. That was focus grouping.
Yes,
like it's so
that's
many
what I
different
mean.
things, right?
Yeah.
All in one, but it's just like kind of this thing. And I think that's important for our nerds. And nerd in my household is not something that's bad. That's a good thing. Just so people know, when I use that term, I'm not meaning it in a bad way. But I think this is what, my doctorate is in human development. That's cradle to grave. the time you're born to the time there's such an expansive set of knowledge in that degree in the studies. I ended up focusing in on basically post-adolescence 4, so mainly adult development, and within that, like the development of character at the individual organizational level. So I did that big broad brushstroke and connected down to what I actually studied to do something, to demonstrate something. What I learned actually is how much I don't know about human development. And what I just demonstrated to you by talking about the degree specificity was all the things about cradle to grave development that I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think what education can do for people, it can be handcuffs or it can be a jetpack.
Yeah.
Right. It can really lock us into something or really free us in a way. And for me, it was freedom because it allowed me to see so much and know so many things, but then also know how much I didn't know about all of these other things. And then to really neck it down, how could I make it accessible to those that don't know?
Mm-hmm.
Right. If I don't know all of these things about all of these, infinity amount of topics, but I do know this little, like this super deep amount about this like tiny thread. How can I make the tiny thread that I have like tied into a bow to present it to somebody? And somebody doesn't see it as a thread, but they actually see it as a bow.
Mm-hmm.
Or I tie it into a knot and they see it as a knot,
Mm-hmm.
right? They see it as something useful for them. And I think that's the best, one of the better approach. I don't have it all figured out, but I think it's one of the better approaches to taking knowledge and giving it to other people is figuring out a way to make it accessible and make it real and make it tangible and touchable. But that also takes, I think, deep reflection and time. And it also takes you thinking less of yourself, thinking less of the degree or whatever you have, and really just seeing it that it's not yours anyway. My doctorate isn't mine. I'm just a pass-through. That knowledge is for me to give to other people.
Yeah.
It's not like I just write, and publish and then no one sees it.
Right.
Right. Like it's for others.
Mm-hmm. On reflection, so, I think everybody's busy these days. It's not just people who are in leadership positions or working or, raising families or whatever. We live in a busy society and busy that we're distracted and we're constantly being asked to be in a million places at once. Yeah. And so reflection is big. And I love to ask people who I know for a fact are busy and are managing different commitments in their life, how they make time for meaningful reflection so that you're not running 100 miles per hour all the time and just kind of making decisions along the way that aren't intentional and aren't with thought behind them. So how do you do that?
I personally bullet journal. I think it's a huge way for me to really focus on what I need to do. And I have a specific methodology for the way that I bullet journal, which is maybe not for everybody's consumption. And I've tried a lot of different kind of techniques out, but I've kind of stayed with the same thing for about 6 or 7 years. But that's what works for me because it externalizes it, right? Like it's not just me sitting humming in a yoga pose, which I'm not opposed to. I do yoga every week. I do it at the start every week to set my intention for the week. But for me, I need to externalize and I need to write it down. And there's a quote that I'm going to bastardize it. How will I know what I'm thinking until I see it? Basically, I need to write it down to see what's in my head. So bullet journaling for me, and it's really simple what I do every day about like how I'm checking in on my priorities, how I'm checking in on my mood and what I'm grateful for every day. I just do that every day. And then I collate that data every month, and then I collate it every year, and I compare myself week to week, month to month, year to year. So that's how I do it. And it's just a simple practice that probably takes me 5 minutes. But more importantly, I create the space for it. I think that's first, right? We go back to that structural intervention. What's the structural intervention in my own life to make sure I have that space? Now, you said it. We're all busy or distracted. I could, when I was there's a person that I used to know as a cadet. I think you know who that person is. I would tell those cadets would come to me all the time. And I was a cadet too, right? Yeah. I know how busy that place is, right? And they would always say like, "Oh, sir, I'm so busy." Like, really? All right. So I want you to write down what you do for every hour of the day for a week. And let's go see if we can find some time. Every single time I did that, people found amazing amounts of hours.
I know.
Right?
Yeah.
So that kind of if you think you're busy out there, for the people that are listening or watching, I would say do a time audit.
Yeah.
And really see what you're spending your time on. Those little kind of 5 minutes, I'm just checking Instagram for 5 minutes, but it becomes 50. I did, I got this favorite Netflix show that I watch, and I watched 3 episodes last night as opposed to 1.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can find time. And look, I'm not bashing any of that stuff.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, if you want to find time to reflect, you can.
Yeah.
And it can be a matter of waking up early, a little bit earlier, or staying up a little bit later. It could be a matter of being very purposeful about not eating lunch with all your colleagues every single day.
Right. Yeah.
But, on Wednesdays, I'm just going to sit and kind of doodle a notebook or think about things. It could be even something as a big of a choice as like where you live.
Right.
And your commute. Because then you could just turn your stuff off. You don't have to listen to a podcast. You don't have to listen to, music. You could just use that time to drive to really think about things. And just a point of clarification at the very end here. We're talking about reflection, not rumination, right?
Yeah.
Reflection is about learning a lesson, pulling it forward for the future, right? Rumination is about that kind of negative downward spiral, beating yourself up. Those are very different approaches. And what I've found over time is that often we need an external person to help us figure out what that is. Whether that's a clinical psychologist, somebody that's actually trained in this stuff, or a good mirror in our house that can help us reflect.
Yep.
Obviously, I will keep going back to Ashley. She's very good at helping me see things in a different light. And I have friends that do that too. I have professional friends, professional colleagues, personal friends for all life that have just allowed me to see something and reflect in a different way. And that doesn't have to be done with alcohol, but maybe that helps. It doesn't have to be done with pizza, but maybe that helps.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be done in person, but maybe that helps. There's Zoom and all different types of way to connect. So just don't put all the onus on yourself with reflection. Make sure you have people around you who can best help you see not only your blind spots, but just see who you are.
Yeah. I think you bring up a great point that reflection and taking time to intentionally think about what we're doing with our time, it doesn't have to be an independent activity. And if it's something that you struggle with, whether it's making time to assess how effective you're being at something, or assess your gratitude, or assess, just how you're living your days, it can be something that you integrate into your routine with your partner or with a colleague or something like that. And going back to the time inventory thing, most of the time, I think when we talk about time, we point out the obvious stuff, which is, social media or sleeping in or whatever it is. And sometimes it's just being intentional with what you actually want to spend your days doing. A person I most recently interviewed, we talked a lot about just really thinking about what it is we do and do not commit to. And so if you're having difficulty making time for intentional thinking, you might be filling your days with some unintentional social interaction that's not filling your cup. And so, and it's not to say that you're spending your days with people you don't like. You could like them, but I've found myself in periods of time in my life where the week would be over and I was like, what the hell did I just do?
All week, yeah.
Oh, where was I? I don't even remember. And it's because I was maybe spending my evenings or my free time doing things that were fun, maybe going to a networking event or hanging out with acquaintances or whatever, or going to a work event that was optional, but it wasn't allowing me to invest back into myself. And so I was just kind of pouring myself into other people, not getting a lot in return. And then I wasn't having any time for me and any time for me to get into my own head and kind of process.
So as a person who is more introverted than not, that's me. I have
works with people all the
but
time.
works with people all the time. I have paid extreme attention to my energy cup because I am, again, all of the things that people can look up and see that I do all require me to be with other people. Go back to my purpose statement. I am purpose built to serve others. Introversion wasn't a part of that purpose building.
Right.
Or was it? Because I think my ability to get quiet time, understand myself, understand that reflection, really deeply think, actually affords me the time to really pour that stuff into other people, right? To really, I was talking about the thread and turning it into a bow or not, right? Like, it takes time to think about how to do that. And I find that my time in my own space with just me in my head allows me to think about ways to better do that, to give it to another person so they can make use of it. And I just think there's a lot of people that think they can manage time. I disagree. Right, time is ephemeral. It's clicked away the whole time we've been here.
Yeah.
We have zero control over it. We can't travel in time. We can kind of reading a book or something like that, or thinking about the future and making it come to fruition with goal setting and stuff. We can time travel a little bit, but we really can't like control it, right? And there's a great book that I've gave to people, recommended over time for a long time, called The Power of Full Engagement. It is by Tony Schwartz and Lower. Loehr is the last name of the second author. But it kind of debunks the idea that you can manage time, and it talks about managing energy, the thing that you can. So if you don't have much quote unquote time, and you got an hour and you got to do this engagement, and you know you're going to be exhausted, and you're coming out of something that you're exhausted from, you can, do the simple stuff, drink some water, have an energy drink, have a coffee or whatever. But you can also break away and like take 5 minutes in the bathroom and get yourself prepped and be in a quiet space, splash your face with some water and get ready. And that will re-energize you for that next 55-minute engagement you got to do. And finding those pockets of time are just as important as getting the time away from your iPad or whatever kind of those things are. It's also like finding that self-rejuvenation so you can do all the things. And again, this is not just about being at work, right? This is about like getting ready for your day. This is about those kids you might have. This is about, maybe you don't have kids. Maybe you have a dog that is really important to you, like, and they're full of energy. Like, you need to find that space for that. Maybe it's finding the time to work out so you can be healthy. Maybe it's finding the time to read because you really want to invest in yourself. Maybe it's finding the time that I really have this tough problem at my job and my organization needs me to be on point for this change or this deal or the sale, and finding the time and the space to get ready to prep for that comes more from your energy and not maybe from what you're reading. Maybe it comes from your eating and sleeping and all other things. And that book was a life changer for me.
Yeah. Love that.
Yep.
Before we close out, want to kind of talk about some practical career advice. So something I love about your resume is that I don't think it's very linear. You've had a lot of different positions and jobs that some of them I didn't even know existed, and that's a compliment. And so what advice would you have for people who, I'm going to say predominantly people who are in the military or in the government capacity, where more often than not, pivots or trying something a little different isn't always encouraged to kind of own their journey and to lean into the things that are interesting to them and that they thrive at?
Practical advice for the people who don't want to just climb up the ladder.
And I guess it could be applicable to everyone, but having served and been in that capacity and then not now, I think it's a little bit more encouraged, in the military and in that capacity to kind of stay on the path that you can literally Google,
for sure.
what you should and should not be doing.
Well, the first thing is like realizing how there are different ladders, right? Like you got your wooden ladder, you just lean up against the wall. There's a step ladder. There's the one that's like some metal ladder that you can push out, or it's an escalator or an elevator or something. There's different ways to get up. And that's kind of like, I know I'm kind of making light of it, but I don't think people realize that over there, to get over there, there's many ways I can get over there. And I think people are afraid of stepping away from the path or getting outside of my mentors or my leaders' journey or path. You just kind of gotta, it goes back to that boldness of being willing to, one, like recognize that there are different pathways and not being too scared of that. Two is, the practical awareness of, look, you have to do a good job. I tell people all the time, you might want to step off the pathway. Don't take that job that everyone else takes, but you want to take this other unique one. Well, you have to still do a good job.
Right.
right? Like if you step off the path and do a terrible job, you did that to yourself. You can't blame that on the army, the military, the government, or the structure that you were in. You still have to do a good job. I think what has afforded me some freedom with respect to the path that I've taken is that I've worked hard and it has been rewarded every time because I've poured whatever was in front of me, I poured myself into that role, right? And I did knock down targets. And I had great teammates every single time who also uplifted me, right? Who saw the vision and were like, we're going to get this to fruition for Captain, Major, Lieutenant Colonel, Colonel Cook, right? So I think it's that as well. It's being willing to step into another space, doing well, and then realizing the teammates that you have around you that can help you do well too in those different spaces. And then the last is just, like stop being afraid, right? Like, life is full of missteps, mistakes, and there's a simple quote that a setback is just a setup for something in your future. And I think too many people we're actually not scared of failure. We avoid failure, and avoidance is the problem. We all corporate structure, military structure always like fail forward and all that stuff. No, we like step back. We avoid it in a way. We avoid these new opportunities in a way that actually like hurts us more than anything else. So like embracing what fear is. Fear is natural. Fear is something that when the big canine predator with the teeth hanging out, saber-toothed tiger was chasing us in the savannah, was trying to get us, like that fear thing, like that helped us. It still does. But that doesn't mean you stop doing the thing. Yeah. Right? I think humans still exist. I don't think saber-toothed tigers do. Yeah, right? No, so we overcame that fear. We overcame that. And it was probably through the group, right? But I would think that that's the last thing that we need to really embrace when we're thinking about this is like step into your fear, own it. Like that nervousness, that uncomfortability, turn that into like the energy, take that nervous anxiety, that energy and push it into the space of, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be successful in this and I'm going to work hard at this. And if it doesn't work out, that's fine. Yeah. We are not defined by our jobs, our roles, our titles, our uniforms even. We're defined by the work ethic, the character, integrity, the gumption, the oomph we bring to whatever we do. I'd rather fail miserably in a new task or down this pathway, but people are like, man, he failed so hard. Like he was working so hard at this and he was driven and you know what? That didn't work out for him, but I'm going to pull him over here. Case in point. So we talked about my resume, but not necessarily my failure resume, which is just as important. Those two documents, very important. But some years ago, this is 2017, I had a big failure. I wanted to be a White House fellow, going down this path, made it through regionals, made it to nationals. And, these are hundreds of applicants. It gets neck down at nationals, like 24 people. They're going to pick a dozen. Everybody in my community, my wife, my family, everybody's like, that dude's going to be a White House fellow. Didn't happen. But along that journey, I met this one star in the Air Force. And he said, hey, stay in touch. And I did. And we've stayed in touch all these years. And I beat myself up during that time because I thought it was supposed to happen. This success was supposed to happen. This was off the beaten path now. I'm not supposed to be a White House fellow. Yeah. This is an extra thing. And I lost a job doing that. Like my boss was like, if you interview for that, like I'm taking you off the slate for this other job. And I was like, got it. And they were like, well, you're going to make it anyway. So it's not a big deal. I was like, okay. And then when I didn't, I had to come find a job. Yeah. And then I worked for the worst boss I've had my entire career. I had the worst teammate. I had a totally toxic environment. And I went on another deployment. So I blame myself for that year of my life for a long time. Well, I didn't know until many, many moons later the power of reflection would teach me something about that moment. So that one star that I met back then, that's a 4-star. His name's Daniel Kane. He's the chairman. So we have many professional interactions now in the building. And I see him pretty often. We see each other pretty often for some very unique things. And what I realized at that time was I was supposed to step outside of the box. I was supposed to take this step off the rung on the ladder. And I was supposed to step into that space at that time to meet him at that time so I could be a better colonel for the chairman now than I was going to be that major or whatever I was back then for some other organization in that administration. And it took time for me to see that.
Mm-hmm.
So even when I stepped off and it didn't work out and I had a tough year and I blamed myself, I actually realized like the fear and the anger and everything that I got through at that time was just preparing me for now.
Right.
Because when we first started interacting in his current role and my current role, he said, I know you. I trust you.
Yeah. And that's a choice to see that.
Yes.
A lot of people choose to not see the connectedness of their failures or the connectedness of what became after, what they had originally planned for did not work out. And what a sad way to live your life, to not look for that connected tissue and find those things. But going back to the fear thing, I love what you said. I read something recently that said that avoiding fear is quite literally a survival instinct. And every day our bodies will try to keep us as comfortable as possible because, like you said, back in, caveman years, it all goes back to the cave. My mom always says it all goes back to being in the cave. We were told to stay comfortable, warm, sheltered, out of, danger. And there's the resistance that you face every day with failure, whether it's getting up a little bit earlier and going outside when the weather sucks, or trying something that makes you uncomfortable, at work, or having a hard conversation with the person you love. And I like to break things down in the simplest fashion because I think then you realize how simple it really is. Fear is really just this simple emotion and protection mechanism in our brains to try to keep us safe and keep us alive.
And as long as you can zoom up and see what it is and call it for what it is, then you can utilize it in a way, right? Like you can turn, I don't want to get into the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system and all that, but you can utilize that in a way that can really like boost you or motivate you in a way internally, that you can turn it into something powerful. The simple thing on this stuff is, look, there's not a sharp sword, knife, axe out there that hasn't been against a whetstone. That is abrasion. You don't get any of those tools without first putting it in the fire, taking it out, cooling it off, which is a crazy chemical reaction. And you have to take this mallet and bang it up against an anvil. All of those processes end up in this fine, implementation of, to cut something or to use for a different way. Like all of that process is so difficult and hard. And let's not make it about an object that's metal. Let's make it about the human existence. Humans are born way too early, right? We're born too early. We can't fend for ourselves when we first come to life.
Yep.
And it's hard and it's difficult. We can't speak. We can't even like make food or do any. We can't hunt. We can't do any of those things as a little baby, fresh out of the womb. And we need the world is abrasive and lights are too bright and we have all these sensitivities that we're forgetting. We don't even have teeth, right? And we have to gnaw. Our teeth have to break through our gums. We have to do so many difficult things. We have to crawl and do all those things. And we need the help of others around us to get through that difficulty. So that is life being a whetstone for you as a little human to figure out your pathway. And we put all of these things in over time, right? We got the K through 12 education system. We get picked on, right? In school, we're not good at math, or we're good writers, but not good at this thing. And, Susie Q over there has got all the nice clothes and all that stuff. And all the whetstone, all the whetstone, right? Some of us get the chance to go to college, or we join the service and you get yelled at by some, drill sergeant or something, or we go to college and we get beat up by class. Whetstone. And I don't think I need to go any further, right? It's all the whetstone. It's all just the fear, the uncomfort, the discomfort. It's all making us, honing us, if we see it as that, into an exquisite tool that we can hopefully put to use for others and not just self. But hopefully also we can be a whetstone for others in a way that is not abusive, not abrasive, but beautiful and crafting and caring, tough love, but also all the other things that go with it as well.
Well said. Well said.
Thank you.
I think when you retire, you should have your own radio show where you read poetry. 'Cause it's just so smooth. It's just so smooth. And the vocab, it's just, I love it. I love it. Well,
Yeah, thank
I
you.
could talk to you all day, but
Yeah.
we got places to be and things to do.
Yeah,
And
of
I
course.
appreciate you coming here. I really loved the conversation and just want to thank you for everything that you do as a leader in your day-to-day job
Mhm.
and your nonprofit advocacy for
Mhm.
mentorship for the veteran community and just
Mhm.
being willing to openly engage on some of the things that we talked about.
Mhm.
So thankful that we connected. And again, thank you for spending your Veterans Day
Mhm.
here at the Women in the Arena and bringing lots of amazing women into our network that will
Mhm.
continue to grow and expand.
You're welcome, and thank you as well. Thank you for your time today. Thank for the people who will listen to this boring drivel or watch the video and be like, "Man, that guy looks like Barack Obama." But well, thank you for your time today. I really appreciate this. Is a wonderful opportunity to think about our own service as veterans, my own service, and getting up and again, I think being purposeful about my purpose, right? Like I'm spending the morning with you trying to serve others. So thanks for the opportunity to serve my purpose. Thanks.
Awesome.
The Women in the Arena podcast is powered by Iron Butterfly Media, a production company committed to honoring the lives of women who have had an unseen and outsized impact on our world. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you have a woman who you would like to nominate as a guest, please shoot us a message on our social media platforms. Be sure to subscribe and follow on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. See you next time.